Good morning. I will now call this meeting of the Louisville Metro Air Pollution Control Board to order. The first thing on the agenda this morning is a public hearing on the proposed agreed board order with Clariton Corporation, and I will read the open statement. This public hearing held by the Louisville Metro Air Pollution Control Board is called to order, and it has been held pursuant to KRS Chapter 77 and district regulations. Notice of this hearing has been published pursuant to state law. Or statements must be presented today. Statements should be concise. If you have a written version of your statement, please submit it to Mrs. Hampton after your presentation. All statements will become part of the hearing record. There is one agreed board order to be reviewed today. Would the staff please submit the agreed board order of Clariton Corporation?
Thank you, Mr. Hilton. The district brings for the board's consideration an agreement with the Clarion Corporation, which operates a specialty chemical plant pursuant to a Title V permit in the city's Park Hill neighborhood. The district alleges that Clarion failed to perform reasonable inquiry prior to certifying that information in the report submitted to the district was true, accurate, and complete. In spring of 2017, Clarion submitted 3 reports to the district, which referenced emissions from 2016, the annual compliance certification, their emissions inventory, and the second semi-annual compliance report for 2016. While reviewing these reports, the district noticed inconsistencies in reported emissions of toxic air contaminants and the source's compliance status. This included emission inventory reporting emissions of TACs such as hexavalent chromium and nickel far in excess of amounts allowed by their permit and the district's strategic toxic air reduction program. In February of 2018, the district issued a notice of violation alleging violations of Clarion's permit limits for TACs and requesting additional information on their emissions. Clarion initiated an investigation into their emissions and responded with additional information showing errors in their calculations. This included using finished product compositions throughout their processes rather than using raw materials in the in-process material compositions. On October 12, 2018, after verifying the emissions submitted, the information submitted, the district issued a revised notice of violation. The district requires that reports submitted from a facility to the district be certified by a responsible official with a statement that reads, based on information formed after reasonable inquiry, I certify the statements and information in this document are true, accurate, and complete. Due to the toxicity of the pollutants that were misreported and the overlapping nature of the conflicting reports, the district changed the allegation from an excess emissions exceedance to failure to perform reasonable inquiry prior to certifying the information. The district also alleges the company caused excess emissions of opacity on January 9, 2018, and of nitrogen oxides, also referred to as NOx, on June 10, 2018. On January 9th, Clarion reported visible black smoke emitting from a flare for approximately 40 minutes. Their internal investigation of the event determined that plant personnel shut down the cooling water to the condenser for maintenance without properly notifying plant operators. This caused excess hexane to move through the condenser to the flare, resulting in black smoke. The company has implemented a corrective action plan, including updating communications policies, increasing frequency of training for their operators, and testing sensor equipment. On June 10th, Clarion reported excess NOx emissions from a scrubber for approximately 30 minutes. Their investigation into the event determined that multiple issues developed simultaneously, which caused the excess emissions, including changes in production, low water levels to the scrubber. The company reported they have changed the procedures to deal with high NOx events and begun exploring alternatives using nitric acid in this process. The company has agreed to pay $7,500 to resolve these notices of violation. The district recommends the board adopt this as proposed.
Thank you very much. Would a representative of Clarion would like to make a statement?
No, sir. Clarion has no comment. No comment.
Does anyone from the public wish to make a statement regarding the agreed board order? Does anyone else want to make a statement? Are there any questions by any board members regarding the board order?
I have a question. It appears that twice there was an issue with water, insufficient water, so we're shutting it off and then not having sufficient. That's been corrected.
So on one of the events, they shut down the water, and that was apparently a maintenance staff issue, didn't communicate it properly. That was addressed with training to the operators and the maintenance staff. I don't have information on the knots, on what they did to correct the low water level on that one. Would anyone from Clarion like to comment on? I can look into that and get back to you if they would like to make a comment on that.
Yeah, I can give you my business card afterwards, and I can go back and review the investigation, and that way I can give you technically accurate information.
Yeah, I just would like to know that there's step-by-step procedures now that take care of the water issue because it showed up twice and that'd be fine.
Any other questions? Yes.
Besides the air emissions, are there any testing of the water then, or a referral to the appropriate agency for water testing of those accidents?
Water discharges and this equipment's outside of our purview. I don't have any information on that. Sorry.
Any other statements? There have been no further statements or questions. This public hearing is adjourned. Now I'd like to call the regular meeting of the board order and recognize that we do have a quorum here today. Thank you. Mr. Talley, introductions?
Thank you, Chairman Hilton. And yes, we do. I am happy to announce today that we have a new board member at the table, Steve Sullivan. Unfortunately, the electronic copy of Mr. Sullivan's bio that was provided by the administration was very badly blurred. However, with a magnifying lens last night and some painstaking patience, this is what I was able to decipher from that document. And please, Mr. Sullivan, correct me if I missed anything or get anything corrected. Mr. Sullivan has both his BS and his master's in geology from the University of Kentucky. He retired in 2014 from the Cardino Group, where he was a principal and the CFO since 1989. His professional affiliations include the American Institute for Professional Geologists, Geology Society of Kentucky, and the Kentucky Geologists Survey Advisory Board member. That was the most I could get out of that. In his retirement, however, Mr. Sullivan has many community volunteer activities, which include the Board of Geological Survey, Botanica Inc., the Dean's Development Council for the University of Kentucky College of Arts and Science, and the Alumni Board for the Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences at the University of Kentucky. Again, my apologies. I was provided a nice long bio on Mr. Sullivan, but it was very hard to read.
Yes, that's quite all right. Well, I'm glad to be here. Looking forward to the value that the group brings. And excited to be here.
We are excited to have you.
Back to board, thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Chairman Hilton, there's one other introduction I'd like to make. We have a new employee who was actually out at work at the last board meeting, so he's been here a little while. But he is our new compliance officer, Matt Dwyer. If you'll stand up and everyone can take a look at you. So he's been here for a little while, but I wanted to make that presentation as we do with all new employees.
Other recognitions?
No, sir.
The minutes have been distributed for your review. Are there any corrections to the minutes? There have been no corrections. The minutes are approved. So we can move on to our next agenda item. Public comment, Mrs. Hamilton?
I've received no formal comment this morning.
Okay. Any unfinished business, Mr. Talbot?
No, sir.
New business, we will The district recommendation that we adopt the agreed board order with clarity as proposed. What is the board's pleasure?
Make a recommendation that the board order with the Clarendon Corporation be approved.
You get a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion about the proposed order with clarity? Any questions? All in favor of adopting the agreed board order, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, the agreed board order with clarity is adopted. So, moving on. Committee reports.
No committee reports for this month, sir.
Staff reports.
Thank you, Chairman Nelson. I'll start out updating the board on some things that I brought to their attention as upcoming events at the last board meeting. On November the 27th, the West Jefferson County Community Task Force, in conjunction with the NAACP, held their Environmental Justice Conference at Simon Simmons College. It was entitled, "What We Are, What We Eat, Drink, and Breathe." And so let me just give you a brief breakdown on some of the presentations and presenters that were available at that conference. Tom Fitzgerald, the Executive Director of the Kentucky Resource Council and Adjunct Professor at the University of Louisville, Energy and Environmental Law, provided a presentation. Arnita Gatson, Executive Director of West Jefferson County Community Task Force and the Environmental Climate Justice Committee Chair for the Kentucky NAACP, also provided a presentation. There was a discussion by Dr. Matthew Cave, an MD with the Department of Medicine at the University of Louisville, talking about the connection between liver disease and environmental factors. APCD provided a presentation and we gave a review of the current state of air quality in Louisville. We prefaced that presentation with a discussion about where we started and a brief history of air quality work here in the city. And then we ended that discussion with a brief talk about where we're headed. So just wanted to give a well-rounded presentation. Sometimes it's hard to understand that current discussion if you don't understand the past, and you need that in order to understand why we're making the decision to move forward in the direction that we are. Russ Barnett from the University of Louisville gave a discussion on indoor air quality research that he is conducting. And then there were presentations by Kurt Mason, the USDA Urban Conservationist for Kentucky. Kelly Deering-Smith gave a really nice presentation from the Louisville Water Company talking about water quality in Louisville. And then a presentation from Dr. Mahatnagar, PhD at the University of Louisville and Director of the University of Louisville Environment Institute. And then Simon Cousins, Louisville Grows, the Urban Agriculture Program Manager, gave a discussion on growing a just and sustainable community. So as you can see, it was a packed agenda with a lot of good presentations and information, and I think it was very nicely attended. Another event that I prefaced at the previous board meeting was the fact that we would be, APCD and Louisville would be hosting the Region 4 Air Directors Meeting, that's Metro 4 and Cesar. That was November 28th through the 30th. That event was held at the Brown Hotel. We had over 60 attendees from air quality agencies, both state and local, from throughout the Southeast United States in attendance. And we also had multiple representatives from EPA. As always, there are informative discussions and presentations on a number of relevant topics. Just to give you a brief, and this is very brief, outline of the agenda, there were discussions on modeling programs. EPA Region 4 Program Director gave us an update. That was from Beverly Bannister. Discussions on regional updates on the NACs, on SIPs, the State Implementation Plan and permitting. There was a very interesting discussion on emerging contaminants update and risk communications experience from North Carolina, and that was a follow-up to a previous presentation they had given. As always, needed information on grants and funding as they brought us up to speed on where EPA stands in that regard. And then I think very pertinent discussion on the training needs of air regulatory agencies across the country, the initiatives that need to be started, and a particular focus that will be given to training. We are probably not as dire shape as some agencies, but with retirements, there are some agencies that are going to lose years and years and years of experience in the next few years. And so having appropriate and competent training available to all the new staff that will be coming on board is just really going to be critical. So we are supportive of that, and everyone is really working hard toward putting together a more comprehensive training program for air regulators. In addition to those presentations, APCD provided some presentations at this conference. Our own Michelle King gave a presentation on our environmental justice experiences in Louisville. She did an excellent job bringing to a forefront an issue that is becoming more of an issue and more relevant across the country as agencies and communities start to deal with environmental justice issues from years and years of that type of neglect and causing disadvantages in certain neighborhoods. And then we also provided, in conjunction with that, a bus tour of Robertown and the adjacent West Louisville community. I want to give a special thanks to TARC, who provided cost-free transportation for that trip. And then also a special recognition to Matt King, Stephen Prevette, and Brian Gary, who provided the narrative on the bus. I had multiple folks come up to me and just to tell me how informative, how professional, and in some cases just how entertaining that discussion was on the bus ride. So on one of the buses, I'm not exactly sure what was said, but it was very well received. And the tour really accomplished the primary goal, which was to enhance the conversation between us as air regulators about issues that we all face in our community, how to address them, best practices, and it's just good to hear what's going on elsewhere in terms of us trying to deal with the environmental justice issues that we have here. That type of interchange is just always very valuable. And then lastly, I want to recognize APCD staff who took initiative and advantage to attend this conference because it was located here in Louisville. We had many staff attend, and I just want to thank them for the exemplary way that they represented the district in our city. In the last couple of weeks, we also had the opportunity to meet with some key Metro Council members, and this really was in response to a community, someone in the community who made a presentation at one of the council meetings, and the gist of it was a discussion about communication between the district and the community. The council members present were President James, Angela Lee, and Jessica Green, along with their administrative aides. And then from the district, there was Michelle King, Rachel Hampton, Tom Nord, and myself. And then also present was the Metro Government Council liaison, Teresa Bahara. And this actually was a very good meeting. It was very informal. It was in a conference room down at City Hall, and it just provided an opportunity for some very informal discussion. And we took the opportunity to bring those members up to date on the RARE project and on air toxics monitoring. And we also had the opportunity to explain to them that we have reached out on several occasions to make that information available to the public. And so we've had a couple of meetings, and in fact, a meeting with the person who made the comment at our offices after hours with EPA, available via conference call to go over the findings that were uncovered. And so we did that. But let me back up a little bit, because what really happened was the lead researcher wanted to make a presentation to his peers at a conference in Denver, Colorado. And so this was prior to us having released that information to the community. And what we told him was that you can't put that information talking about the data that you've uncovered about Louisville before we make that available to folks in the community. So we scheduled that impromptu meeting where we invited those community activists in to update them on the presentation that was given in Denver so that our community would get that information first. And so we went through that discussion with the council members. We just wanted to make clear to them that We are very conscious of the need to be transparent, provide that information to the community, that we feel like we've done so. And then we always look for additional opportunities to provide better communication with our community. Talk to them a little bit about the workshop series that we provided in 2018, and then also let them know that we're planning a light series in 2019, and in fact, we'll ask for their help to help increase community participation in those meetings, because those are excellent informal opportunities for us to talk about those things that are important to the community. So I wanted to make the board aware of that meeting so that they would know that had taken place. We also had the opportunity, Rachel Hamilton, Michelle King, and I to participate in the Mayor's 2019 Strategic Planning Workshop. This was held on 12/13. It was an all-day process, and really was building on the prior strategic plan and then outlining what we thought would be the priority steps over the next 100 days for the administration. So that hasn't been released to the public, so unfortunately I can't talk about specifics, but when that is released, I'll take the opportunity to walk through particularly those things that relate to the work that the district does. Just a few odds and ends. On December 7th, Operation Brightside and the Partnership for a Green City held a workshop titled Urban Heat Island Effect Youth Summit. And during that morning workshop session, Understanding the Urban Heat Island Effect, our own Michelle King provided a presentation on Urban Heat Island 101. And this really provided the groundwork for the presentations that would follow for the rest of the day to give people a base understanding of that discussion. But there were also topics that were covered: urban heat island research, how it works, trees and urban heat island, green space, impervious surfaces, and cool coatings, and then the connection, urban heat island in the real world. And then a brainstorming session was held to discuss school projects. And this was for students. There were more than 110 students in attendance. And I just have to say, this type of workshop and then others that need to take place because they provide the education and the understanding necessary for our youth for the important environmental decisions that they're going to have to make in the future. So I think these opportunities are just invaluable. We need to find available opportunities and means to engage our students more in this discussion, because they will be making the ones making those decisions in the future that are going to be incredibly important to us going forward. I think I talked a little bit about our interviews. We have completed the interviews for Environmental Engineering Supervisor, Engineer 1, and Personnel Manager. We hope to have these finalized given the holidays, probably sometime in January. And then Michelle and I have continued our work with Louisville Resiliency, and then our plan is to have a presentation for the board once that plan is finalized. A lot of what they're doing in that resiliency plan is directly related to the work that we do here at the district. So that really is kind of the month in review. As part of the director's report, Matt King is going to just give the board a brief update on our emissions inventory system, and then there will be a presentation, Air Quality and Health, from Michelle, and this is a selection from APCD's 2018 during their workshop series, and so we wanted the board to see the type of information that we are putting out there for the community. So I'll turn it over to Matt.
Thanks, Keith. So every year the district does a point source emission inventory. We do a lot of estimates for mobile sources and what we call area sources, but the point source inventory involves receiving reports from the companies about their activity levels and how those translate into emissions. And we have decided to purchase and implement a program called SLICE to help with this. It stands for State and Local Emission Inventory System. Real creative name. The company is Windsor Solutions, who puts the package together. They work with 12 or 15 state and local agencies to develop this system. We hope to be up and running in February or March of this year. The system will be optional for companies to use for the first year, but we plan to make it the only way to report. And I think folks will find that helpful. It will be pre-populated with the data we already have, so people won't have to start from scratch and reload their data. It will allow our staff to continue to do the review job and have more time to look into the specifics as opposed to the data entry job where currently we take the paper submittal and enter that into the database ourselves. It is Chrome Air compliant, which is an EPA requirement. If you're going to accept electronic data, there has to be some level of security, so off the shelf this already meets that requirement. We feel good that because it's used so many places, that it'll be a pretty easy transition and a pretty solid system for us to use. On the back end, it will report directly with the EPA's database. Every December, we upload our data. They're typically not major issues, but there's always a few things kicked back. The stack height isn't in the range that they accept, or the units on the emissions are off. This will make sure that the data is already compatible with that EPA system, again, saving us some time on the logistics so we can put more into the actual analysis of emissions. And then lastly, this will provide some really good data usage tools to put reports together for the board, for citizens, for our planning purposes, to help us further use that data to actually manage air quality in Louisville and do less of the data entry and the background work on that. So we're excited about that. We're going to try to have a few industry reps help us in our testing of the system. Then we're going to offer group sessions, open houses, as well as one-on-ones with these companies. And we hope by early next year, early 2020, that we're up and running and companies are comfortable reporting emissions through that system, and that we can get the benefits that come with it.
Any questions from the board? This will eliminate all the paper copies that the companies submit every year for the emission.
Exactly. It's a pretty paper-heavy operation. Without that Chrome Air compliance, we would still require the paper. Luckily, with that, we don't. So it'll help on that end. We already do a lot of electronic exchange too. It's easier to work with, but we mandate that paper copy, and that will be eliminated.
Are the emission inventory reports, are those confidential?
They are not. There's an ability for companies to claim some confidentiality. They provide a redacted copy and a public release, but emissions data is one of those things that the EPA says can never be confidential. So maybe the recipes of how you blend your product, that can be protected, but the amounts of the emissions cannot be held confidential.
Thank you.
All right. I want to try to figure out where to stand. Terrible room for feedback. As Keith said, this is just a selection from our workshop series. We wanted to give you a sort of taste for how these workshops go, what kind of information we talk about. This was a 90-minute workshop, so I'll be clicking through some of these slides rather quickly. We are already condensed down a little bit, but please don't hesitate to stop me and ask questions if you see something we'd like to discuss in a little bit. First of all, I wanted to point out Torin. There she is, Dr. Torin. Torin hosted these workshops for us in addition to being on coordinating the development of them. So we start out each workshop with Torin kind of welcoming folks and giving some overview of the series, as well as our goals for the series. So why are we here today? And then specifically what that day's workshop was aimed at achieving. In this case, we wanted to talk about impacts of poor air quality on human health, what contributes to that, so what are the sources, where are we being exposed to these air contaminants, and then what we can do at different levels, from individuals to all the way up to government level, to reduce our exposure and our contributions to air pollution. Now, a few ground rules, there's some questions. We wanted to highlight our sunshine symbol. That was a public participation sunshine. We use that throughout the series to highlight places where there's an opportunity for public comment, stakeholder involvement, some role in the work that we do or that was being discussed at the time for public input. And then we wanted these to be interactive throughout. So, starting with air quality and health, we started with an overview of showing air quality affects all of these different health outcomes and many more that aren't listed, and air quality. So we know that that's a driver of our work here, and we really wanted to underscore that in the community. So in order to do that, we wanted to bring in partners. We tried to do this throughout the series, and we're doing so as we continue the series in the future. So we had a colleague, Art, from the health department come and talk about their health equity report, which really shows what all of those health outcomes look like collectively for our community. T. Gonzalez, the director of the Health Equity, Center for Health Equity, was here a few months ago and presented this. So I am going to click rather quickly through these slides, but of course this one here is the driver for the center's work, and that's that real stark discrepancy between life expectancy across our county. So that's, of course, the ultimate health outcome of life expectancy, but there's many along the way as we go through life, and so it explained the tree metaphor that is used throughout the report and highlighted some of the health outcomes that can result from air quality. And you notice down across the bottom, I'm good from here, there are these root causes that are identified for all of the health outcomes to highlight some of the ways that our city, our processes, our systems of power can drive those health outcomes. And along with those, they then discuss those different health or root causes for each of the health outcomes that they've identified. This was key, and so Nick introduced the workshop socio-ecological model, which is how that Center for Health Equity discussed what can be done at all these different levels of society to improve those health outcomes and to address the root causes of them. And we went back to that later in the presentation during the workshop. So there are best practices at all of these different levels, and the Center for Health Equity recognized a few, but obviously there's many more that can be developed as we work through their findings. Also provided resources for readers of this report. If you haven't already seen this report, if you haven't really dived into it, I encourage you to do so. It is at healthequityreport.com. It's just a really fantastic piece of work that is very highly recommended for some of the challenges we face as a community when it comes to public health. So then we kind of came back to that sources of air quality. And this picture is really what I think most of us here in this room are familiar with and what we think about when we think of sources of air quality or poor air quality. That talked a little bit about emissions inventory. This is kind of how we buckets generally, sometimes we use different terminology, but generally what we think of the sources of air contaminants. So everything from those stationary sources, typically those that we permit here at agency, mobile sources, both on-road and non-road, area sources. That's everything from your home to a gas station to painting and paving activities. Those are all of those activities across our county that really add up contribute to air pollution. And of course, natural sources of air contaminants. So we picked ozone. We didn't go into all the different pollutants that we talked about here because we did that in another workshop. But we picked ozone to really highlight how those different sources kind of come together because ozone, not emitted directly, it forms atmospherically in the presence of sunlight and a chemical reaction happens between NOx and VOC, so it's oxides of nitrogen and volatile organic compounds. So we looked then at our emissions inventory, as we just talked about, to see what are some of those sources of those pollutants. And you'll see there are sources of those precursor pollutants from all of those different buckets of air pollution that we talk about. So there really is a wide variety of our activities as society that contribute to pollutants that impact health, and they can add up. So here we highlighted the work of the Air Removal Project. That was the project that put sensors on asthma inhalers and tracked where users and when users were using their rescue inhaler, and then correlated that with some different factors, including some of our air monitoring data. And this is a map showing where risk of asthma is, not necessarily incidences, but the risk of asthma after they correlated those different factors. So as you can see here, there's risk across our county, but it's certainly concentrated in some areas around industry industry and local sources, so our highways and city centers. But of course, our body doesn't really know whether we're breathing indoor or outdoor when those health impacts occur. So we really wanted to include discussion of indoor air quality when we're talking about air quality and health. EPA estimates that we spend 87% of our lives indoors. Another 6% of our lives in cars, leaving only about 7% outside in the ambient air. So obviously, indoor air quality, when we're thinking about health impacts, is a big piece of that picture. So we kind of went through some of the sources in homes, which is typically something that we as individuals have a little bit more power to control as well. So this is really important information for people looking to protect their health. Russ Barnett, researcher at Louisville, just recently I heard him say to someone he's been working on a project to measure asthma with senior populations that do indoor air quality sampling. He once told someone, the worst air quality in Jefferson County is in your home. I kind of blew away. But it was a very, he didn't know this person. He hadn't been in this person's home, but he'd been in enough homes across Jefferson County to know that we really do live with a lot of air pollution in our homes. So it's a really important thing to remember for thinking about protecting health. So what can be done? And again, we come back to the socially ecological model that the Center for Equity introduced in their report. We wanted to look at what can happen collectively across all of these different steps to improve air quality, but also protect health. And sometimes those are the same things. Sometimes it may be reducing your exposure, even if you're not reducing the emissions. So that top level is public policy. Can't really read it very well. I'm a little unbelievable in this group, but that's national, state, local law, basically. So obviously we're all here for the board meeting. We're aware of the Air Pollution Control District's work in this area, including the Clean Air Act, STAR, and other local regulations. I want to point out, of course, you see our public participation sunshine up at the top corner. We also added a little symbol that said workshop here because we had another workshop on this very subject, the APC regulatory process. So we went start to finish through that in a workshop we followed. Of course, APC is not the only one with those policies and regulations that impact air quality. Health and wellness has done a huge amount of work around smoking ordinance. There's the Office of Sustainability Street Protection Ordinance work, the developed global comp plan and land development code that dictates how we use our land and how we interact with those sources, where they go in our community. And IFTA doing the same for transportation planning. All of those things impact air quality and our health, but aren't necessarily something that says air pollution before their name. So it's really important for the community to understand all of those different opportunities to affect public policy. Then at that community level, so what are organizations doing among themselves and reaching out to the community to do to improve these outcomes? So of course we started with the work that we do, like providing air quality information, making sure people are aware of what the AQI is, where they can find that information. We support local research and data gathering. And here it says USL projects. Since then, we could probably strike that and say Environmental Institute that has come together under that umbrella there. And again, we reached out to the community partner and asked the Superfund Center, which is part of that Environmental Institute, to come and talk a little bit about their work in research. So Jamar Wheeler came, described some of the projects that they're doing, talked about the Green Park project, which I know you've heard about here before, and the community engagement core is part of that center as well, which is really kind of that connection between the researchers and the community that should benefit from that research and hopefully inform it as well. So coming back to our model here, we also highlighted some other community efforts like tree planting projects that are going on across our communities. Good work with Metro, but also our partners like Louisville and Louisville Grows. Our cool roof rebate program, that's something out of the government, but it's not law, it's not regulation, so we put that in this community bucket here. And some other work around housing and the health department's work in providing some resources. Organizations, what are organizations, businesses doing to kind of within their own operations? So we highlighted Title III schools and Title III businesses. All these are links. We wanted people to have resources back to after. And then to the city's greener fleets and greener mowing practices. Interpersonal, so what we do kind of among ourselves and within our networks, our families and friends. So some ideas on how you can do that. I think the classic place to carpool, get together and reduce your emissions, and then share knowledge of best practices. So if you are in this room and are a social media user and don't already follow the CARE programs, Facebook and Twitter pages, you should. And then help us share those messages with your network as well, because we put a lot of really good information about what can be done at the individual level. So we want people to know data to us or know how air quality might impact their health on a day-to-day basis, but also understand their vehicle emissions and what they can do to reduce those through the CARE program, our lawn care for cleaner air and more less programs. Of course, stop smoking. That is one of the number one contaminants that are driving those health outcomes, especially with cancer health outcomes. We have much higher rates up here in Louisville than the national rates. But also reduce use of and storage of household chemicals. So we also, and this is where we spend out about half of the rest of the presentation. So if you were at the workshop, there would have been some really cool interactive pieces here with Dee Lynch, our CARE program coordinator, with some myth-busting facts about idling, and with Bradley Coons, our grow more, little less lawn care for cleaner care coordinator, about what you can do in your home and yard. But we left these resources up for folks. But I want to leave you all with a trailer for next year. So coming in 2019, our Clear the Air workshop series is already well underway in development. Torrin has confirmed and locked us in for the third Monday of the month. This last year we did them every other week, and that was a little bit of a breakneck pace for us, as well as the community members that wanted to attend these workshops. We slowed it down a little and stretching them out for the full year. So we'll actually have 10 workshops this year. So we are growing it, but over a greater part of the year. February through November at the main branch, half hour later, down to that 6 to 7:30 time slot. It's going to give people more time to get there. And we will also be adding 2 technical workshops. We had one of those last year with EPA coming in and did about a 4 or 5 hour workshop at the break time. The main library's computer lab. We're hoping to do 2 of those, one in spring and one in fall. Stay tuned for those, and I'm going to leave it on that. So, thank you.
Cheryl,
Any questions?
thank you very much. The workshops were very great. I attended too. So I'd like to encourage the board members to, if available, to try to attend one of these workshops. The parking is free, down on Dark Street, the main library. And I think you changed the time. Last year was it 5:30?
Yeah.
So I think you changed the time will probably make a big difference. People try to get down there.
And you don't have to feed the meter right back.
Thank you.
At 6, it's all free parking.
Right, that's great. Great. Any other questions or comments? Michelle, thank you very much.
And so unless there are questions from the board, that completes the director's report.
Okay, we can go to the air quality data. I'm sure all the board members have a chance to look at the air quality monitor data, PM 2.5, ozone. Any questions regarding the data from any board members? Enforcement status report. Very short report. Looks good. Any questions from the board members on the enforcement? And last one is the excess emission report. So this is, I think, the last report from the 10th until October the 10th to December the 10th. So, any questions on any of these reports? All the seemed like we had a very good year for the district as far as air quality. Except for a couple spikes with the PM 2.5. But otherwise, I think the district should be congratulated for a good job, well done this year. This is good, really. Any questions or comments from the board? Before I adjourn the meeting, first I'd like to thank everyone for your attendance and hope and wishing that you have a happy and safe holiday. And we look forward to your attendance and support 2019. So with that being said, the meeting is adjourned until January the